Alright, hello folks, I'm LA Little and this is your daily TA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective, each time asking ourselves what happened today. And what does it tell us about the coming days? We do the show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, if you have questions, either type them in like I see Tommy has done here, text them at 303-912-9110, or email. So support@tatoday.com. Any of those methods, I'll take them and try to answer all your questions. And I usually have about 5 or 10 minutes left at the end of the show, so send them in if you have them. As far as another request, that is, folks, I do this show, been doing this show, this is almost 3 years now. You know, it's evolved a lot. There's more that we want to do. There's other platforms we want to move to. It's not as if there's nothing to do here, right? I mean, I believe this fits with the ideal of educating, which is something I truly believe in. But you know, I have to make money too. And so I always ask you every now and then, you know, tell a friend, tell two. And I'm not joking. Everybody trades, everybody has investments. Everybody can benefit from the site, whether they're an active trader or not. There's some, you know, resources available on this site, you know, that can help people that simply want, you know, general information, and it's open to them. They can come in, for example, and if I pull this over, they can come in, for example, and come to here and, you know, pop into the sector trends, and they can get a pretty good reading of what the trends are, right? And that's, you know, that's invaluable for someone that's trying to stay on top of the market, because when you start seeing your intermediate term time frame trends change, especially if they go to bearish, you know, that's a good indicator in and of itself, if nothing else. Of course, you know that there's a lot of other things out there that are valuable, but you know, those are good examples. So if you just take a look at your email list and, you know, send it to a friend or two and just tell them what you think about the site. I know there's a lot of you live, or a few of you live every night. A lot more of you watch it both on live stream and on YouTube, so I would ask that. Let's pop into the markets. Actually, let's look at the numbers first. You know, yesterday I remember specifically making a point to say don't get too bearish, because we've seen this time and time again, right, where they try to sell this thing off, all of a sudden it looks like it's going to go, and then they turn around and just take it right back the other way. And today actually was a total takeaway bar almost on the NDX. We had unders, overs, things like that, and right back the other way. Dow was up 48.5, 16,866.5. S&Ps came down, did the retest, and what is it doing? Trying to regenerate higher, up almost 10, 1959, almost 1960. Composite also retesting and regenerating higher, 4379.5, 29 points higher. NDX, of course, 27. 38.2690, almost to the highs again. And the Russell, what does it do? Test, and regenerate back higher, 9.63, 9.36, 1182.5. Now, when I say regenerate higher, they haven't regenerated higher. It's not official, just like yesterday was not. It was only a test of that regeneration zone. But they did, in fact, pop out of there, and if they start making new highs, then they're regenerating high. Let's go look. Well, actually, let's look at the rest of this. So we had the gold contract of about $7. So oil right at the highs, 106. You know, the dollar's off slightly, and the bonds were up a pretty good percentage. So this market doesn't want to give it up, hasn't wanted to give it up, and it's no different here. So that regeneration, we'll look at it first on the S&Ps, and then we'll look elsewhere. It was right here off that swing point high. We came into it yesterday. We're talking about it could make it to the bottom because it was within 6 bars. Usually it tries to test into the bottom. Well, that's exactly what you got. Test into that area. Volume was decent, right? And actually, if you look at the volume, on this up was about 30.6, on this down was 31, so it actually had a little bit more volume. It actually had more volume than yesterday as well, slightly more. Gets under it, but flips right back around in spite of it, so to speak, and out of the zone, back up, going to try to test the highs. Of course, it's got this big bar that will probably be the real test, which is 1964 roughly, and that's the June 20th bar. So what does the NASDAQ, I mean, what does the S&P do? It comes down, it tests, it regenerates, or at least it is attempting to regenerate higher. Let's look at the Russell next, and let's see here. Russell, get off the monthly. Russell, and here we go on in. So what is the Russell doing? Comes into the swing point high. Again, retest, regenerate zone is here. You come into it, right? You don't quite get to the bottom, but you get pretty close. You do slightly more volume, but you do flip around, you get outside of the zone, and you're back into that big bar, and now it's going to try to test this area. Looks almost identical to the S&P 500. So we've got the same sort of setup here. If we look at the NDX, now the NDX is slightly different in that it did almost a takeaway bar. It was testing into its swing point high, has been doing it for 5 bars, does it again this morning, doesn't even get to yesterday's bottom. It goes right back up and almost takes away everything that was bad from yesterday. Last one, Dow Jones, or actually the Dow Jones, and then we'll do the NASDAQ. Dow Jones, under, over, back over it, right? Less volume. That one's going to try to push back up and test those highs again. Still hasn't been able to get over those highs. And if we look at the NASDAQ looks the same in that it tests into the zone, right? Again, zone is here. Test into the zone, can't get underneath it, right? And this one didn't even come back as far. And this one and the NDX have been the strongest. So it tests into that area. What's it going to do? Go back up, test back over, and try to get over this high. So tomorrow, next day, you know, the rest of this week, if it takes it, well, that is tomorrow, the next day, the test is to get back over the highs. If you do, what do? You set up regenerations, right? That would be regenerating off the swing point high. And though I didn't show it on the rest of them, it is on the rest of them. You now have ABCD structures on the upside nested inside of existing ABCD structures of varying measures. And in this particular case, and the reason I chose this one to highlight, was you already had ABCD structures in place here, 2 of them nested already, right, which increases the odds that you're going to get up to that high. And now, if this one gets over this high, you'll have a 3rd one. And man, if you get 3 in a row, that's pretty good stuff. That gives you a pretty good indication that you're going to make it up there. So, big swing back the other way. Quarter ends on Monday. It looks to me like they're going to do their best to take it right up into that area and you know, try to squeeze this thing higher into the quarter end. Let's look at the world markets next, because they don't look nearly as bullish as these markets. In particular, let's start over in Europe. Now remember, Draghi came out and had his guns blazing and did all kinds of cool stuff that he was going to drive the euro down and drive the markets probably higher as a result. Well, they didn't quite get higher, and in fact, they just did an ABCD structure on the downside. So you got an A, a B, and it was kind of a small one, but it finished it off today. Coming into a little support zone, it may try to test that tomorrow. This is the CACs. This to me is probably the weakest on the continent itself in terms of their economics. And it's struggling. It's struggling mighty. Didn't have huge volume, but had decent volume coming back into about the same amount. So tomorrow morning, maybe a test, maybe it just pops up and just tries to come back up. We got a gap to fill now. You have done the ABCD down, so this one corrected a little bit deeper than one would have thought, but it is a correction nevertheless. Let's look at the DAX, because that one is actually the opposite and is the strongest in the continent in terms of economics. Comes back in, you get two swing point lows. It gets under one of them today, so you're going to get trend change here. You still got this higher range. I don't believe it's actually did the retest regen yet. That's 98.10.29. Yeah, it hasn't yet. So we may see it finally get in there and try to do the retest regen volume. Just lighter as it comes back. I suspect this, of course, being the strongest one, I suspect this one is going to flip around. Maybe you test a little bit lower in the morning, but for the most part, it looks to me like that one's going to try to jerk around and go higher. FTSE. The FTSE, ABCD down, right? Comes down today and breaks, and that one measures back into this area. So we've got this divergence where CAC's just finished one off, FTSE's just starting it, and the DAX doesn't even want to give it up. So we've got mixed signals in Europe, in the major three. I suspect Draghi's going to have to bring his bazooka back out and show it to folks, because they evidently don't believe he's for real and what he's done is going to do anything, or at least the markets aren't acting like it. And maybe it's because they're mixed up with what Great Britain's going to do, because Great Britain has been sending signals that they might have to raise rates, with, or Lord forbid somebody actually raise rates out there. Let's look at Hong Kong. If we go over to the Asian markets now, remember these markets were already correcting. They've come in. This is the 8 shares, 1018. They come into the bottom, get underneath it, flip back around, close over it. Let me see, 1080. I believe it closes over it. 1018, yeah, closes over it. So you've got your test, you have lighter volume, this looks ready to bounce. And if I look at the FXI, not the FXI, but the HSI, right, which is the Hong Kong index. This one, let's go to the Hong Kong, not Russell, here we go. The Hong Kong index actually was trading into that low, didn't ever make it to it. It's doing like a little hang here, but it looks to me like it's not even going to make it down there. It still has a big volume here, so whatever kind of bounce it gets, if it does, it's still susceptible to coming back down to test this area. It would actually be better if it just tested it and got it over with. Hasn't done so yet, but we'll see if in fact it can before it's over. But Asia in general, if I look there, and if I look at the Taiwanese market, those markets, they don't look too bad. They look pretty good actually. So the weighted index here on Taiwan. So when I look at all of that together, overseas, not nearly as supportive. Domestically, looking pretty strong. And if we go and look, before we flip to the OX markets, if we go and look at the sectors themselves, we're going to see that the sectors are not looking too bad either. So let's flip through the major ones right quick instead of all of them. The transports, the stocks, those all look like they're stuck in a range at the highs. The materials, though, these guys keep banging the top. And maybe this is a function of the fact that we've got strength in the metals as well. But they keep hammering the top. They keep hammering it with bottom, with the volume. So this looks to me like it's going to try to break out. The XLE is an interesting story. You finally break down yesterday. Big volume comes out. You get under back over lighter volume. This is going to go back and test that top. But I do think that will be it. This is probably a range trade now. XLF still trying to regenerate higher, nothing there. XLF, the XLI, the industrials, they actually came into the retest regen zone. They've been trying to get there for a while. Volume's not very heavy. It is an ABCD structure down now, so this will be a good test to watch. Can it get underneath this and finish off an ABCD structure? Or does it swoop down there and come straight back? You've got other swing point highs down there in a big support zone. So it looks to me like this one is going to try, and it doesn't measure that far. 55.82. It's about $1.60. It's 54, 53, 50 roughly. So you can see it just gets you into the zone, but it would be underneath that swing point high. So this one's going to be a good test as well. XLK still looks okay. It seems like everybody wants to rotate into some of those stocks still. XLP, these guys, you know, after a huge breakout with big push, big volume, it comes straight down, fails the retest regenerate zone, and you see how important this is. You never know what's driving these things. You know, you can sometimes know, but most of the time you don't know what the news really is. General Mills fails to meet their quotas, their earnings expectations. They drive it down some more. It doesn't over, but it has heavier volume. It's doing a retest into this zone now. I suspect it's going to test some more. Probably going to hold on that big volume low for now. But what does that tell you when you do something like that? That says you're in a range trade now. So the up move that looked like it was in a place really isn't happening. Utilities, the opposite. They get the big push up. They break over multiple swing points, get the fade back in, do the retest, and now trying to regenerate. Same with the XLY. Also, it's been a struggle there, but that one is held again. But the one that's got the real strength now is the XLV. You've got the PPH, I think it is, which is the drug sector, if I remember it right. Yeah, the pharmaceuticals, they're breaking out. They'd had a big, long consolidation. Now they're starting to break out, and you're seeing it in the XLV itself. So that sector, ABCD structure up, and it's a pretty decent size one. So if you're looking for rotation, here's where it's at, and it's in force right now, trying to move higher. Let's see what that number is on this guy. Got a low of 57. So almost 3 onto that gives you about 62.25. So another $1.25. All right, so that's what the sectors look like. And before we move over and start answering questions, let's look at the ox markets. TLT, we talked last night that it was going to have a test today, try to get over this range that was over and get over this high from June 3rd. It did. And of course, we talked about it going in, if it did, and testing this high. 113.10, gets over it, back under it, has less volume. If this thing goes up tomorrow, I'll have to send you a rain check, because I don't think it's going to. That kind of a doji, it's not really a doji, but that dark bar on that test after this struggle itself, I believe that one's going to come back in. If so, that's promising for the equity markets. And then there's gold and silver. I'll start with silver. This is an interesting chart. So you get this huge spike up, and this is momentum, folks. Big spike up, big volume, right? Next day, it's a failure at the top, lighter volume. Then you get a doji, still wants to fall. Then you get another test of the top, failure. And then another test of the top, failure. Every day they tested, they fell. Actually, today was slightly more volume, so that's not quite true. But yeah, it's fell twice out of 4 bars. Got tells on almost all of them, yet keeps trying to push higher. Nobody wants to give it up. It will come back in, and probably just like our markets, it'll come out of nowhere and just splatter down, like the equity markets yesterday for no good reason. It's all technically driven, but that's a big push, and silver doesn't want to give it up. And then if you go look at gold, gold tests and fails again. Gold doing the same sort of thing. Gold test 2 days in a row now, fails both days, and we're taking that June 19th bar as the failure bar. It does look like it's going to test one more time tomorrow, and then that will set up Friday. A lot of times Fridays you get bigger moves. So I don't know that I want to buy here, but it sure is hard to short that. I think what you still have to do is wait and see if it'll give you a retrace. One thing I was noticing today, I've talked to members about, is the FXE. This kind of ties in with the whole euro thing. I mean, the European equities. The euro keeps pushing up, even after the bazooka boy came out and told us that he's going to kill it. Big spike up on bazooka boy's day in the sun. It's going back up there to test it. I suspect when it finally gets up there and does the retest regen at the bottom of this 135 number, that's probably going to be it. But it looks to me like it's going to find a way to claw back up there before it fails. And then at that point, if it really does come down again, come down hard, then those equities probably go up. And who might do that? Well, you know, ECB has a meeting first week of the month, every month. I wouldn't be surprised that it kind of lines up with that when it comes time. All right, let's go see what kind of questions we got. I had one email. Let me take that one first. And then I'll pop over to the boards and take whatever's there. So there was interest in a stock called Sun Edison. I did a little homework on this before I came on the show, just take a look at it. You know, this is an interesting one because they've got short interest of 27%. Of course, their PE is 279. But then again, you know, what does the PE matter if it's Tesla or evidently Sun? This thing has nice volume pushes over and over, and the reason for those is they're short covering. So a lot of times you'll see these huge pushes, and then you'll get these big spikes right back down, and that's a result of short covering in a market that's heavily shorted. If I pull over the weekly chart, you know, what you have here in the weekly, get that focus there we go. What you have here in the weekly is you've got this big range consolidation that's been in play here for a while, and that consolidation continues to be holding prices. It's about right there, holding prices, a little bit of a push above it and a little bit of a push below it, but for the most part since February when it broke up into this area, it's been going sideways. That's a good 4, almost 5 months now. It does look to me like it's going to do it a little bit longer, though. It doesn't look like it's quite done. And if so, once it's done, you know, then you're going to see some sort of a pullback. I mean, some sort of a breakout as a result of the general trend being up, more than likely. So this is not something you want to short. You definitely don't want to short it with huge short interest out there. They do semiconductors, integrated circuits. They're basically doing solar power. The revenue growth is 23%. I don't know what their sales numbers look like. I wasn't able to get those. I'm assuming they're pretty good because anything like this, that's typically what it's running on. So question is should you buy it here? My take is it looks to me like it's going to come back one more time, but if these shorts start covering, you're going to get another big spike up, and that would be the break of the range. So, you know, I would try to get it down in this lower area around 20. I don't know that you'll get it, but I think that's where you have to assume it. Let's put it a different way. If you're gonna buy it here, you got to assume that it can trade all the way back down to this area and do it on nothing. As a matter of fact, if you want to be safe, you have to give it all the way back to here. You know, so if you want to stay in this on an intermediate term time frame, right, your stops have to be this low. On a short term time frame, they have to be that low. So now that you have those parameters, now you can kind of work it out for yourself and say, okay, is it worth the risk? If I do ABCD structures, they have completed. There is the potential for another one to set up here, but it hasn't done so yet. And it would be, as a matter of fact, it'd actually be higher. This bar would go up to the top now, because you haven't got a setback until now. So the potential for a breakout, if it starts to break out, right, it's worth jumping on it if it does that. But I think I would force it to break out and then jump and ride with it, and then, you know, make my money get out, or wait for it to come back so that you can have tighter stops on it. So that's soon. Let's look at what Tommy had. What did Tommy have here? Oh, Tommy's favorite, Boeing, the Boeing Constrictor. All right. Well, I'm glad we waited on it. We were talking about this and talking about waiting. So you get a nice big push down, and it actually breaks under that bar. I'm glad. I'm assuming you've been waiting on this because we've talked about it a couple times. So it looks like you had an ABCD down, and that goes to here, and that looks like it finished today. Big volume. So this is probably why the Dow is struggling so today. This is a pretty big weighting. All right, let me pull over the weekly. Let me see what the weekly looks like. Huh. I don't know when they report earnings. I think they're in the latter part of the earnings season. But it does look to me like it's going to try to test into this area now at some point. I don't think it's going to do it immediately. I think you're going to get a bounce now. But look at what this thing did. So you're trying to buy this, aren't you, Tommy? I believe you are. This push all the way back up, tested into the breakdown bar and couldn't get over it. Right? And as it was going up there, it had that huge volume that was quadruple witching. And that gave it up, right? And then it came back up the next day, pops up there, tested a couple days, now you're coming back down again. It does look to me like it's going to test into this lower zone because you actually have this big range now. Up here, you know, that looks to me like, let me draw it again. You kind of have this on the, and I'm on the weekly chart, folks. You kind of have this range that's in play now, right? They're about equidistance, and it does look to me like it's going to test the bottom end of this range on this time frame. Before it gets there, though, you just finished off an ABCD structure. It is going to need to test this low. It doesn't have to do it right away because it finished off the structure. So you may just get the bounce tomorrow, which is actually the least bullish case. You'd rather it get under this, back over it with lighter volume, because it probably would have lighter volume, and then you could get a push up that might be decent. How far can it go? I think the farthest you can expect now, because now it's given its colors away, right? You had a big push here, big push here. This low now is going to be a resistance on the way back for two reasons. It's high volume here and it's high volume there, right? If it gets over that, then I think the most you can get is back up to here. So I wouldn't want to be in this for any duration, and yeah, it's not a good setup. I mean, that's why you wait and you let them test, you know, and you see what they want to do. And volume definitely came out of this thing. So when volume comes out of it, they're telling you there's more and more sellers at lower and lower prices, and that's never a good thing. Yeah, it can bounce, but in the meantime, it's not where you want to put your money. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Markets did what they had to do. They turn it around, head back up. Let's see how they test the top next. Thanks for joining me. Have a great night. Take care of yourself. And until next time, I'm LA. This is and it was your Daily TA Wrap. I'll see you on the next show. Good night, folks.